taught you to hate the texture of your hair?
Dark skin equates to being poor, dirty, ratchet.
They tend to be the bad guys in Tyler Perry movies.
Straight from the border.
That doesn't even make any sense.
It's something that I don't usually talk about because I'm afraid that I'm making people uncomfortable.
I felt ugly being of a darker skin tone.
I went on a trip to Korea with my mom. Some woman walked up to my mom and she asked, "Why is your daughter so dark?"
How do we fix this?
This is arguably the most complex, nuanced social dilemma since the beginning of this country. And there are myriad roads in, and all of them are essential. But so consistently left off the table is whiteness, right? So we often learn about this group and their struggles and their triumphs and their heroes and heroines, and yet we don't ask ourselves, struggles and triumphs in relation to whom? White people in North America live in a society that is deeply separate and unequal by race, and white people are the beneficiaries of that separation and inequality.
I have never met a white person who did not have an opinion on racism, have you? If you are not sure that all white people have opinions on racism, just bring it up the next time you're around a bunch of white people. Maybe tonight when you have a drink in Ballard after the talk. And see how that goes. Not only do we all have opinions, but they tend to be very emotionally charged, and that has nothing to do with whether they're informed or not. I have an opinion on virtually everything. That does not make them informed. I don't believe you can grow up or spend any significant time in the United States without developing opinions on racism, and they will be emotional and strongly held. And again, that has nothing to do with whether they're informed. And in fact, if you are white and you have not devoted years of sustained study, struggle, and focus on this topic, your opinions are necessarily very limited. And no, a trip to Costa Rica, multiracial nieces and nephews, right? These are not sustained study, struggle, and focus. Now, how can I say that when I don't know most of the people in this room? And this, of course, is the first thing that tends to trigger white fragility, generalizing about white people. As a sociologist, I'm really comfortable generalizing about white people. Social life is predictable and patterned, in really observable ways, and we've got to grapple with those patterns. But I can say this, that your opinions without sustained study, struggle, focus, mistake making, relationship building, repair, they're superficial because nothing in society gives you the information you need to have more than that. In fact, you can get through graduate school in this country without ever discussing racism, can you not? You can get through teacher education in this country without discussing racism. And if you're in a progressive teacher education program, you'll have one required multicultural education class. But that doesn't mean you'll be talking about racism. You might just be talking about how to introduce ethnic authors in February. Right? You can get through law school, you can get through social work, right? You can be seen as qualified to lead a major or minor institution in this country, to lead a group of people, to supervise people. You can be seen as qualified to do those things with virtually no ability whatsoever to engage with any complexity or nuance in the issue of racism. Can you not? All right, so that is the first challenge, humility. The second is individualism. Apparently white people do not understand socialization. Because we really think that we are exempt from it. And of course, the irony of that is because we're socialized to value the individual, we put a lot of effort there, but we think that, just because I say I am or want to be, I could be exempt from these forces. So that is another challenge. And again, generalizing, suggesting race has meaning for white people will often trigger white fragility. We think if we don't see it, it isn't there, and you haven't explained it to me yet enough so that I understand it, so I'm not really sure that could be valid. And it's the system we're in. and none of us could be, and none of us were exempt from its forces. But the way we're taught to think of racism functions beautifully to not only obscure the system, but to exempt us from its forces, right? Or to have us believe we are exempted from its forces. Now, as a white person, I was raised to be racially illiterate, and I actually think all white people are raised to be racially illiterate in this culture. And in gaining racial literacy, I have had to understand not just the collective dynamics and dimensions of racism, but how racism impacts different groups who are perceived and defined as people of color, how it impacts them differently. Right? So not all peoples of color experience racism differently. The things I've internalized about different groups is different. Where and how they are positioned always in relation to whiteness or far away from whiteness, and how that manifests, right? All of that must be understood. I feel very confident to say that there is something profoundly anti-Black in this culture, and that nothing seems to turn white people's cranks of resentment, like thinking Black people got something over on us that they didn't deserve. And the deeper belief is that they're inherently undeserving.